Mary Ann won't be here at all. She has got a speaking engagement tonight, so.
But we expect David?
As far as we know, so. So the first thing to do is take a look at the topic list. Sarah and I made a number of changes to this earlier this afternoon, so this doesn't look like the one that was sent out. However, the things that were on that are somewhere either on the work session or on the board agenda. We didn't
find your
drop
agenda
anything,
item
so. But partially we did that because Leonard is here to talk with us and introduce himself. So we wanted to make sure we had some adequate time for that. So anyway, with that, okay, thank you, Doug. I'm gonna introduce Ben. So with that, welcome, Leonard. We're anxious to kind of hear from you or answer any questions you might have about us, but let's kind of start a dialogue here.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invite. It was great to kind of get immersed in the fees, and sorry that took extra time, but I appreciate your patience with us. I've been with the county for 9 months. I come from Southern California. I was a county executive in San Bernardino County. I started within that county as a library clerk, putting books away on the shelf. I worked for King County Library System for a while. I thought I was going to be a library director of a big, wonderful library system, but in working for county government, I was asked to do different things and found myself as a deputy executive officer, and then the chief operating officer during the pandemic, and then the chief executive officer. So when we were up here for a little short time working in Kirkland, in Redmond, in Bothell libraries, my wife and I said, man, this is a beautiful place. But San Bernardino called me back for a wonderful opportunity to open a new library. It was the largest library in Southern California at the time. And so we said, if we ever could move back up to the Pacific Northwest, wouldn't that be awesome? Maybe in retirement, and an opportunity came available. And she said, just apply. And so here we are.
Wow.
It's been a wonderful 9 months, a busy 9 months. There's a lot going on. I think the county is still working through the growing pains of going from 3 to 5 commissioners, moving to a new building. The county, not organization, but county as a whole has experienced a lot of growth. And I think county government is working to catch up to some of that. And so being brought in by commissioners to help develop process and to create some efficiencies and create different organization structure. When I got there, they had just established another assistant county manager role and put them in charge of all of the departments. Then the county manager left and went on to Tacoma. So when I got to that person's like, I'm not sure what my role is and what I'm supposed to be doing. And that was Rob Gelder, who was fantastic, and really enjoyed working with him. And he's now at Paulsville, city of Paulsville. Yeah. So there's a lot going on. We are working on our process. We are working on our budget for the next biennium. The board decided to do a status quo budget for 2025, the second half, but 26, 27, we have a structural deficit that we'll be working through. And just really charting the course of when your expenditures go above your revenue, you have to make some decisions. And so we're walking that through and what the right process is. The board was meeting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So my colleagues in the city would say they had a couple of council meetings a month. Sometimes they would have it once a week, but we were having meetings 2 meetings a day for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We just changed that to Tuesday, Wednesday, so we can be more efficient. Sometimes we'd arrive at meetings and they wouldn't have anything to talk about. But then they just start, getting into stuff, and we weren't ready or planned. So they've been very responsive to that. And so our desire is to really look at how we operate and determine how we can do it in an environment where resources are scarce. Just like everybody else, we're watching the executive orders right now and looking at the impacts, working with our State Association of Counties, especially departments like Public Works, Public Health. They receive a lot of funding. So it's exciting times to both build and be responsive. And I've come to really enjoy the Thurston County team. They're a great group of people who want to do good work and really embrace the commissioner's vision and myself. And so that's what we've been working through.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What, if anything, do you want to know or hear from us about our organization or our challenge, our place in the community?
Well, what I've been really excited about, we did a farm tour a little while ago.
Mhm.
And where I lived in San Marino County was on the western side of the county in a city named Chino, who had a lot of agricultural roots. In fact, they used to be all dairies at one point. And what we saw is they lost their identity very quick to quick build out of warehouses and development. And it was a real sore spot for a lot of the community. So we did the farm tour. And I was taking pictures and sending them to friends. And they're like, oh my gosh, where is that? I'm like, it's where I live, you know. But we have a wonderful heritage that I'm learning about in Thurston County. And I really believe that's a huge asset. And so the more that I'm aware of that we can promote that and talk about it, and learning the good work that you do. I know that there's an opportunity we're working on with a land purchase together, and you know, that there's some details there, but that's very exciting for us, in the county side. We have a new, CPED, it's Community Planning and Economic Development Director, Ashley Arai, who herself, is, you know, is into equestrian and into open spaces, but she's come through the planning side, both working in large areas and chooses to be in Thurston County. And so I think we have a real advocate and someone that wants to help take what's special about Thurston County and walk that through so that things can be built out responsibly, and sometimes not built out because that's the responsible thing to do. So yeah, we're kind of charting that course. We're trying to modernize and update, holding two things in tension. We want to be responsible in how things develop and let the community have a say. We also have some very old codes and planning apparatus that haven't been changed for decades. So we're trying to do that at the same time, but I think we have a team in place. So what I would want to know from all of you is, how has the county engaged in the past, and have you felt it's been successful? No need to reinvent the wheel, but if you feel like there's areas for growth, I'm here to listen to that as well, because we'd like to be better partners. And part of that, why I talked about the meetings, is it's important that we understand people watch our meetings, and when sometimes comments are made without being all informed, those can have detrimental impacts to the way people think and feel about the county. Because there is an audience, it's on YouTube, and even if you're not watching it then, it's out there forever. And so we're trying to educate our board and give them more information and bring people to the table to educate them. That's why I thought your comments were well received, and appreciate getting that presentation to us and working that through. So yeah, I'll just stop and hand over to all of you. What do you want me to know as the county manager?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I will say that Ashley or I actually met with our board maybe 3 months ago,
Oh,
something
wonderful.
like that.
Great.
We invited her in and had a nice conversation.
That's good.
Nice conversation with her.
It's a pretty neat gal.
Yeah, and I think we've had a good working relationship with her in her previous position, and you know, expect that to continue in her new position.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, questions, comments, you guys?
Couple of comments. One thing we appreciate is no surprises.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to read about it. Well, I guess they want to say you publish it. I don't know.
Unfortunately, they do. I don't say that because they're just on us right now.
You know, been there, done that. And what we can do to help you as far as communication, outreach type stuff. We used to have a county person come to every meeting, which I didn't think was really necessary to come to every meeting, but how we could come to your meetings too. We used to do that as well.
Okay.
Which doesn't mean you need to do it now, but that's an option, I think.
Yeah, we are big on no surprises. It's just better for everybody, if you can be aware. So Sarah's been awesome at communicating, and I really appreciate her approach when we kind of dropped the ball on getting the fees over the finish line. Because the meeting got canceled, but didn't get rescheduled, and that was the trigger to move it forward. She was very gracious, and that's the kind of partnership that fosters goodwill. So you have a great leader in that. I've seen her already operate that way. If there's anything ever that you feel you want to hear from the county or want to know, and vice versa, I think that staff to staff communication so that we can inform our board. That's what I'm talking about. No surprises. I don't want a board member to say a comment without all the information that then negatively affects you or something you're doing. And then you hear about it somehow. I'd rather say, well, let us come to us, let us talk. And if obviously, if you need to discuss it, and sometimes we absolutely do, let me get the information from Sarah, and so we can communicate that out. So we're really working those internal communications so that we can be more responsive and responsible in our communication.
I appreciate your comments about striking a balance around development. And that's an issue that I personally wrestle with, and I think as an organization we wrestle with, because we have seen tremendous loss of agricultural working lands, farmlands, forest lands, and it jeopardizes the continued existence of our agricultural economy. And so, on the one hand, we see the agricultural economy. No, it's a chunk of our economy here. The EDC has done some good analysis of that. We also know that there are young people who want to farm.
Yeah.
And the problem is these lands aren't accessible to the people that want to take them over as farmers, either because they're priced for development or the owners just flat out don't want it to be farmland anymore. And so I used to teach agriculture at the Evergreen State College, and so many bright young people that came into this community fell in love with it, much like yourself.
Yeah.
Couldn't figure out a way to stay here and make a living as a farmer and moved on. So it's something that it exists, we know it exists, and it's something we have to continue to work on. The other kind of very related issue to this, and I had a conversation with Commissioner Menzer just yesterday on this, is this issue around UGA land swaps.
Yes.
And the impacts that could have on the potential viability of agriculture in rural lands. If those rural lands are now being transitioned to an urban use. And so, I know there's a lot of process involved in that going on your side. But, thinking about that in ways that hold the potential for continued agricultural activity at the forefront as we work through those really difficult issues. I think that's just something that I hear from, and that I want to, make sure. And I know at least one commissioner understands that already, and probably most of them do, but it's an issue.
Yeah, and Commissioner Menzer is a champion for not only the environment, but really understanding what we're doing as a county to make sure we can anticipate unintended consequences to the best of our ability. That is a pressing item right now, and what we've give you a little sneak peek. What we're realized is based on the guidance that we need from the Department of Commerce. There's ambiguity because of
22 and 24.
Yes, and so
yeah.
To be of service to the commissioners, Ashley brought that to my attention a couple of days back, and I said, well, we need to then focus in. Let's not assume if we don't have clarity. Let's advise the commissioners. We don't really have the clarity to understand which one, and staff were hoping that Commerce would be able to give us the rulemaking by now, but we changed the administration. No one's not doing their job. It's going to take us a few more months to get that. I think that'll help with where folks are at, and be better advise the commissioners as to are there issues here, which there could be when the rulemaking comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe just a couple more minutes. Any other thoughts?
I'd add on to the agriculture part. Don't forget the other working lands like forestry. We've had the fish farm down at Rochester. We got shellfish, and we got other things going on just besides agriculture. Yeah, that's pretty important. I drive through Lacey. Particularly Lacey, I think. Why they always have to cut all the trees.
I think probably one important thing for you to know about, as well as one, we definitely appreciate the partnership. There's been a ton of code revisions and updates and permitting process streamlining, and we feel that on this side, and a lot of things are making conservation work more possible and the timelines are shorter so that we can meet state funding cycles, and we really appreciate the commitment to doing that work to get conservation on the ground. There's still some work to be done on that effort, but
Yes.
we're here to help with
Thank you.
that. And your staff have been really gracious in creating those friendlier permitting processes or ones that are supportive of conservation. The same can be said for the VSP program too. We collaborate on that piece. Boy, has that been a really fun thing for all of us to get acquainted with. And we just have waiting lists for community members seeking services in that program. There's a lot of interest. The outreach has been successful. People want support. So while that program doesn't come with a large chunk of funding attached to serve all of those community members that need support, we definitely continue to chunk away at getting as many of them supported and track those metrics as much as possible. So
Yeah.
the big thing I wanted to mention though is when we came in for our rates and charges public hearing, thank you for all of that process and that great conversation. It was really rewarding to come back after 5 years and have that conversation with the county commissioners and see the support from their side. Commissioner Mayhew in particular, was inquiring about increasing our rate beyond our statutory cap
Okay,
or an escalator clause. And at that point in history, I said, well, this is not possible in state law.
okay.
Now that session has begun, there's bills in both the House and Senate
That's
right
good.
now, which I'll send you some information in email so you have the links and
Sure.
stuff to that. That would move that cap setting authority to the local level between the county and the conservation district. So depending on conversations between the governing bodies of those jurisdictions, the per parcel rate could be set at a local level that was best reflective of the community and the priorities of that community. So as we're all thinking about long-term sustainable funding for conservation work, we'll see what comes out of this session, but right now there's active legislation that's well supported by our legislators.
That's promising.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, one of the most unspoken things is, here's the level that we're providing, and the man is up above the ceiling. The
Yeah.
demand is just escalating, and
We're getting expensive. Yes, for
so
sure.
And
this is really important.
And we've been able to meet some of that escalating demand by success in getting state and federal funding. But you know what that situation looks like in the short term, so it makes this bedrock local funding even that much more important to help us weather the whatever is gonna come from those other entities.
Yeah, I mean, I would very much anticipate that the county commissioners would be supportive of that legislation. So send us over the links and I can update the commissioners, and then we can also update our lobbyists to track. So that they can then support.
Thank you. Well, we really appreciate
Yeah,
you stopping
thank you
by
so
and
much.
starting this conversation, and it is a start, it will continue.
Wonderful.
And we're here to help you, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
If you ever wanna go for a bike ride in Independence Valley, which is a huge organic farming community, she'll put you in touch.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Don't play board games with Betsy.
No, I'm Ben, I'm the attorney.
Nice to meet you, Ben.
Thank you, Leonard.
All right, thanks, Leonard. All right, with that, let's move to Kiana for a little update debrief here.
I sent a share, the screen share request, okay. Okay, cool. So today we are just gonna do a little debrief about Harvest Festival that we held back in October, which is several months ago, but I'm finally here to talk about it, so it's exciting. How many of you were at Harvest Festival? Oh, Almost
Everybody.
Just not you. It's okay. You'll have to come next year. So one of the things, the reasons that we do Harvest Festival is because we want to have a way to engage and educate community members in a really thoughtful, inclusive, and easy way. And so, you know, Harvest Festival is a free event. It's family friendly. We have lots of kids activities. And we also have lots of points of engagement and education for people. So it's kind of not only a celebration, but a tool for us to connect with folks too. The other sort of purpose for Harvest Festival is to really build strong partnerships with community partners. So, you know, the event we hold at the South Union Grange, so we partnered with that Grange on the event, which has been really great. We also have lots of community partners, kind of similar to how we have at the Native Plant Festival in Sale, who come out and table at the event, and we get to connect closely with them. It's a great way to kind of sustain those partnerships. This year we had about 450 attendees, which is right about what we've had the last couple of years. The other kind of cool part about this event is that it is in tandem with our native bulb and seed sale. And this is a really cool event that I'm passionate about. We are the only district that does this type of plant sale. I think it's really special because in Thurston County, we have South Sound prairies, and we're really unique. Our landscape is unique because of that. And so getting to have a plant sale that really focuses on that landscape, I think is really special. And that's not something that we can necessarily offer at our annual plant sale because of timing. And so being able to have a fall bulb and seed sale that's focused on things like camas and you know, columbine, lupin, and all those really beautiful prairie species is nice for our, you know, stewards, our landowners, to be able to access those plants that they wouldn't be able to otherwise. This year we had 130 orders, so that's about the same checked as last year. 823 items were purchased, and each of those items were like a packet of seeds or a bundle. So if you multiply that, we you know, got thousands of plants out into the landscape, which is exciting. The other important part of Harvest Festival is it's our opportunity to award our community members. So we have several different awards from honoring a partner that we worked with, a community partner that was really instrumental in working with us during that year. We also honor folks who are land stewards, producers, volunteers. And so it's our categories are wide ranging, but it's a really good opportunity to strengthen again the partnerships that we have and acknowledge and honor the people that deserve it. And also showcase some of the successes that we kind of in tandem have worked on with these various folks. And so it's been really successful. I think this year. You might recognize yourselves. Yeah, and that's Dan Calvert receiving Partner of the Year award. At the Harvest Festival, we also, like I mentioned at the beginning, we really want this to be educational. And so we have a series of workshops that are going on throughout the day. They're usually held in the Grange, but we've had a couple that are outside too. This year we had yarn spinning. Amanda from Snap Education, WSU Snap Education, came and talked about how to cook and prepare healthy after school snacks for kids. We had a demonstration on recycling and waste reduction, which is one of the things we hear a lot from people is really confusing and hard to access information. And so that was pretty popular. And then we had someone who came and talked about saving seeds, which is really in theme with the harvest. And so those are really cool opportunities that a lot of folks take advantage of. And we're hoping to build up in the coming years to grow the, you know, attendance that we have at them and also showcase them a little bit more too. The other thing that we get to do at Harvest Festival is talk about our programs and services and also show them to people. So we bring our several pieces of equipment out to the festivals. This is Emily here showing off the poultry processing equipment. I think we also had the manure spreader there. We brought the no-till drill in past years. And so people get to really look at the equipment, see how it works, and ask questions to our technical service providers, which is really helpful for folks. And also, we see an uptick in interest in the equipment rental program, so that's kind of cool. We also have a soil testing booth, and folks can bring their soil tests and drop them off there, and ask all their fun soil questions to our smart soil people. And that's been really successful. I think we have, every year, like 20 samples get dropped off, something like that. So people are using it. It's maybe a little overwhelming for our person who does the soil analysis, but well worth it, work through it and get contact with that many people and support that many people. We also have a lot of booths that are focused on some of our technical assistance services. And so we have a forestry booth this year. Alex, our new forester, he had his giant pine cones, which are very popular among kids and adults alike. And so that was a real crowd pleaser. We also have at the same place that people are picking up their bulbs and seeds, we have our restoration folks that are there talking and answering questions about how to plant things and how to support habitat restoration on different types of properties. And then we also have our farm planners there talking about different programs like VSP and the other kind of cost share opportunities that we have at the district. And everyone knows about the pie baking contest, which has just grown in popularity. Every year, I think we have like 20 something pies that were brought last year. And so that was like a little bit intense, but very exciting. We had more judges, so it wasn't so much burden on one or two judges to taste that many pies. But it's a way to get people there and also sort of participate in the festivities. And they stick around for usually an hour or two while they wait for the results and learn about everything else. We also have cider pressing, so a great way for people to use, a lot of people have like, large apple trees on their property. And so they can learn how to turn that into something that them and their kids enjoy. We had seed swaps, swapping garden seeds and even some native seeds, recipe sharing, lots of kids activities. You may have noticed the hay bale mountain was very popular in the middle of the festival. We also had scarecrow making that Sophia led, which was extremely popular as well. I don't know how many people participated in that, like 20, yeah.
As many parents as kids.
Yeah, I think as much supplies as it took all of the supplies we had, so all the room, so that was really cool. We have live music, treats, we usually have a coffee bar, and the Grange makes lunches. And we have like other, like Blue Heron was there with bakery items, so there's lots of ways for people to enjoy themselves and enjoy the festivities while they're there, while we're also promoting local businesses and showing some cool parts of the season as well. Any questions about Harvest Festival? Yes.
Well, you mentioned the soil test thing was kind of overwhelming. You weren't testing them right then and there.
No,
What was
I think there's peak seasons for soil testing, so fall and early spring that we
So they have
often get a lot. So not just what's at the Harvest Festival, but folks are bringing them all throughout that time period. And so there's like rushes, and that just kind of comes with the territory. I think one year, I think it might have been the first year, Adam had quite a few, and I remember him remarking that it was like, oh, this is more than I expected, but I think it all works out okay.
Yeah, so we don't need to do anything to address that big.
I don't think so, yeah.
I think the other factor on that this year is Kenna was brand new at doing that.
Yes,
She
and
had-
she just dove right in
Yeah.
and answered all the questions, it was
Yeah.
amazing.
So I think she'll be more prepared to know what to expect next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I have two things. So for the last couple years that we've done this, it's been on the same weekend as Olympia Arts Walk.
Yes.
And I've heard people say, gee, I would have come, but my kids were doing this, or so I would just encourage you to think about maybe trying to do it on a different weekend than Arts Walk. And
Yeah,
I
it's
think
something
we
we
could get
thought
higher
about.
participation.
There's a few other like festivals, events that happen that weekend and also the surrounding weekends.
Yeah,
So it's a little bit tricky, but we'll explore that and talk about how that could work, cause you're right, we've heard that as well.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention is, as far as future workshops, you said we'll be doing more of those. I think it'd be great to do a workshop on winterizing your garden.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is something people don't pay attention to that they should, and I'm willing to help with that if
Okay.
you want me to.
That
but
would be
I
great.
think that'd be a good
Thank you
one.
for volunteering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Being
we've
recorded.
done a workshop, put your garden to bed, and we have it recorded on our website, but that's totally different than doing it in person. And,
Yeah.
you know, you can really see hands-on, opportunities. So yeah, that would be amazing to have there. Thank you.
Okay, other,
Yeah, just, and including in that, things like not cleaning up all your
Yeah.
leaf litter and all that, 'cause it's
Uh-huh.
not exactly winter gardening, but
Right.
it's,
yeah, winterizing, not winter
Yeah.
gardening,
yeah.
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 Just to tag on to the comment about Arts Walk, because that's come up before, we are very popular in the community. And so we are also looking at how to manage crowd flow now with our events. Our plant sale gets 1,300 people, and we've had more at past harvest festivals. I think one year it was on the
600,
second.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 600 or 700 people, and so it's interesting, we're collecting data about how was the depth of conversation? Do we want volume of humans? Do we want depths of conversations? What's too much for space and safety and those types of things? So we are also looking at like not duplicating on weekends with other events to get the maximum amount of people. And then we also need to be prepared for the maximum amount of people that come to those events. And so sometimes there's a bit of a fine line there. I just wanted to share that because that's something that we learn and we're like, we got to be careful because people really like to come hang out with us.
That
So
is
be
true.
Careful what you wish for, yeah.
It's a smaller space than maybe would be ideal, and there's only so much parking, and
Yeah.
luckily we've been able to work with the neighboring property to use
Yes,
that
that's been
pasture, and
huge.
that's been really
Yes.
changing, but it still is, you know, the space it is, and maybe in future years, we're in a new space and could hold it at, you know, our education and conservation center, but for now, you know, this is sort of a really good partnership we've developed
Yeah.
and has been really successful, but you know, Sarah's right, and you're also right, so it's kind
Yeah.
of meeting in the middle
Yeah.
and finding
Of course.
a spot there, yeah.
I think we probably need to move on if that's okay. Thanks for being here,
Yes.
Kiana, and for being delayed a little bit while we talked with Leonard.
No problem at
Yeah.
all.
Okay, let's look at next item on our agenda here, which is our policy around cash reserves and investments as amended.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you'll remember, we started this conversation, you may not remember, that was last year already, guys. Last month and last year, around the investment policy. Where we're at right now is, we brought back the, cash reserves and investments policy to the board. I don't think it had track changes last time, and so we wanted to make sure that that was on your work session item list. In addition, there's a resolution that you'll see proposed here for consideration and discussion in the work session that we would anticipate going forward next month. If the board doesn't have any concerns or questions, we can pull both of those up and kind of look through them and answer any questions that you have. This was one of the things that we discussed actually early last year. That was something that we wanted to move towards, to be smart about our finances and getting that return on an investment. The local government investment pool has been hovering around 4.5%. And so we want to develop some really good policies to keep funding in there, particularly for big things like our CEC, so that we can get some return from that. Yeah, the Conservation Education Center, so that we can use that as just one more strategy in the mix, to be wise about our revenue coming back into the district. So we can pull one or either of those up if you'd like. If you've had time to delve into them, we can focus just on areas of questions. It's up to the board.
Well, we all took a look at it.
Yep.
Do we need to pull it up? Do we have questions? Do we need to? All right.
Good.
I felt like it reflected what we talked about in the past, and I assume both of these have been vetted by you, Ben?
I've looked at them and asked my questions and they've been satisfactory, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know that we need to look at them, and I think we're probably ready to move on those and take action on them then.
Great. And then just the policy is on the consent agenda for this evening, and then our path forward would be to add the resolution to the consent next
For
month.
next month.
Sure.
Sounds like plan. Okay.
Thanks for being so responsive on that.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
We've really come a long way in the whole transferring our banking and thinking about how we manage our money in the last couple of years. I think that's been really great, and everybody that's been involved, Ian and Kristen and everyone. Yeah, it's been good for the organization. All right, with that, item 5 is Employee Management Committee.
Yeah, and this is an article that's already included in our CBA, our collective bargaining agreement, and has been since its inception, which is essentially that a committee can be formed to delve into and address any kinds of tasks or items of the CBA that need some synthesis. And so the application that we're applying it to this time is we're doing this trial work week reduction period. And in the first portion of this year, our charge is to develop some metrics to evaluate this work week reduction, both from like impacts to productivity, to deliverables, to community access, to staff health and well-being, all of the above. And so what I'm looking for in this is board members that would like to participate in this committee. That's sort of the objective tonight, and maybe beyond tonight, because we don't have 2 board members here, but is to see who would like to participate in this joint committee. And then that joint committee will start meeting regularly to identify some of these metrics with the staff representatives, and then we'll come back to the board with, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking, this is what we want to evaluate, these are things that we think are trackable, quantifiable, or qualitative, whatever it is, whatever the metrics are, these are the things we think. Is there anything we're missing? So, and we'd like to move on this rather quickly and start to have these meetings in the next month, because we sort of had an idea of maybe we can do this in the first-ish quarter of the year, start to get a good list, because we don't want to go too far into the year and then have to retroactively try and track something. So we want to identify them early and start to track those.
What's your guess on the time involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a little bit unknown, because I think what we're looking at is we're really in the idea generation phase, right? In the brainstorming phase about what these metrics could look like. And then once we sort of have a scope of that, we'll be able to say how much more research could there be. Maybe we'll be able to get it done in 2 or 3 meetings. You know, that would be my hope, is to start with that kind of brainstorming. The tracking end of the data will largely be done by staff following
Okay,
this,
so
right?
that's my question. So this is more of a disappearing task force, and it
Yes,
sets it
short-term.
up, but it's not ongoing monitoring. That's a staff responsibility.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes it a little more
Well,
doable.
Yeah, and
And said I'd volunteer to help with that. This is gonna go away after a few months.
Right? Yeah.
thank you, Doug.
I really don't feel qualified. It was the CBA even was over my head. So, but Mary Ann,
I think
I would
she would be
ask her.
great on that too.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
I will.
Can we just put her on a committee when she's not here?
that's what she does.
I tentatively nominate her.
I have a follow-up debrief with her in the morning, so I'll ask.
Tell her board colleagues have great faith in her to be a
Yeah,
member of that
yeah.
committee.
She's been drafted
Yeah,
to avoid that show up meeting.
yeah. Okay, and 2 is sufficient. Then we don't have.
No
a
more
quorum.
than 2 would be great, yeah.
Well, if it's more than
But then
2,
it's-
then it becomes a quorum.
Exactly.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so I think we would be better to
Yeah.
keep it at 2.
Right,
Yeah.
no more than 2. would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
great, yeah,
Yeah.
so 2 or
Okay.
less would be awesome.
Great, okay.
Great.
All right,
Thank you.
all right, and then moving on to yet another committee. So the basis of this next thing on long-term funding goes back to our conversations November, December about what might be happening to these funding sources at the state and federal level that have allowed us to grow so much in recent years. And clearly this is every day now changing, and we don't know what tomorrow is gonna bring.
Several
Which-
times today it changed.
Several times today, yes. Yeah, it changed here, changed there, courts got involved, all sorts of things, but I think it points to the importance of us getting ahead of this and having a proactive approach to dealing with whatever it is, so that we're not constantly being reactive on this front. And so I also, and I think you'll get a copy of this later tonight, I
Yeah.
finalized, Sarah's evaluation based on our process last year. And we directed her to work on this long-term funding strategy, and we as a board suggested that she form a committee, so she's already doing one of the things we asked her to do for her performance in 2025. So, that's my preamble. Do you wanna talk a little bit more about this?
I have an observation on that too. I think Sarah and her team have done a very good job at identifying direct federal funding sources that are vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think as a legal concern, subsidiary funding through
Mhm.
state and local organizations from which we get funding also need to be evaluated, and that was hard to do when legislature was not in session because we had no idea
Yeah.
what they were going to be doing in anticipation of this. But I can assist in a legal review of grant documents to see the extent to which a funder can yank money from us if they lose funding.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've done that, and I don't know
Mhm.
if Sarah's team has done that.
Sounds like it should be a part of our process earlier rather than later. Yeah. So Sarah, I assume you're looking for a couple people to volunteer to be on this committee to work with you?
Yeah, and kind of an understanding of the frequency that this committee would like to meet and kind of when, how often does the board want to receive updates that will dictate how frequently the committee
Yeah.
needs to meet. I think it would be helpful to have our board auditors sit on this committee since it's related to funding and they are sounding board for lots of financial processes at the district. So I appreciate the legal perspective.
And
too. think
I
that would be
won't
great.
consider it a special task under my contract, so it won't result in an increased legal expense.
Just intellectual curiosity?
Well,
Partially.
part of that is I came in at a time the board was in crisis.
Yeah.
And set the special task versus non-special task metrics accordingly, and
Yeah.
so I've kept pretty close to the hours that I promised the board, even though we're not in crisis, but I have
Yeah.
flexibility.
Thank you, Ben.
So
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have David there. I would also volunteer to be on that committee. I think. David and I would bring different perspectives and skills to that, but I think we could. And to answer your question, how long is it gonna take and what's it gonna look like? I mean, I think the first step would be let's sit down and figure out what the scope of work is for the committee.
Yeah.
And then report that back to the board and
vulnerability analysis.
yeah, kind
Definitely.
of classic SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd like an update each month.
Yeah.
At least for the first few months.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
if hot topics come up.
It's gonna change faster than that. I would
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
recommend that we keep flexibility to have special sessions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Called to address emergencies between monthly meetings
Yeah,
and raise that as a possible, probable.
yep, absolutely.
You're an optimist then.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe Ben, if you have those and other thoughts you've been ruminating on, send those to Sarah and we make sure we include those within the scope of the work.
Okay.
I jumped in there, but I didn't want to give you a chance. I
No,
assumed
that's
you didn't
fine.
want to be on that committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, yeah, no,
Yeah, no. All right.
I'm disappearing. anyway.
So,
Well, it might be too, you never know.
yeah, I mean, rule of thumb here is expect the unconstitutional.
Yeah.
But how can you disappear? You're the only one.
Hmm?
You're the only one. How can you?
Write-in candidates, people can.
Oh, yeah, right.
Write-in candidates. It's happened in other districts. They've taken over districts through write-in candidates.
Yeah, well,
Happened here almost. So anyway, we'll move on. Last topic on the work session is partner presentations.
Yeah, we are just developing our next year's swath of plans. We're trying to be really proactive about being able to be reactive, right, to emerging board issues that you'd like to hear or see from community partners. But I wanted to just get some feedback from the board on organizations, entities, groups, topics that you'd like to learn more about and use your community partner space on your work session in a way that benefits you guys the most. So we identify some things at the staff level. They were like, well, the board should really know about these pieces. We should bring that person to the mix, or this is a key partner of ours. But I would love to hear feedback from you guys too. So this is, you can share if you've got a burning list now, or if you think of things you can let me know. But yeah, we'd love to have your feedback in helping to design those.
Thoughts?
I've got two tribes,
Yes,
how can we partner with them? And the other one would be improving or solidifying relationship with the farmer's market, how we can interact,
the Tumwater Farmers Market,
Or all the farmers?
or all of them,
markets?
yeah,
all of them.
markets, great.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's still farmers who don't know what a conservation district is. I mean, we should, I don't know how we. It's so complicated. But, that would be a way to, maybe we could make a presentation at there, I would say the Olympia market, but the biggest meeting is the annual election. If we could make the presentation there.
I'm thinking of the Neil Diamond song, Brother Rose Traveling Salvation Show, you know, kind of the same thing where we have a jam thing that we take around.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we should be at the meeting. I don't think setting up a stand at the market is. The farmers are there being busy selling, so.
Yeah.
um, Yeah,
And we certainly have a lot of opportunities. I'll look at that one in particular that you mentioned, Betsy, to go to associations or other committees at the staff level and bring information about the conservation district and do that kind of outreach. And, you know, are there other organizational priorities that you guys want to hear as decision makers of the district, or you want to connect? Do you want to connect with other entities or groups at a
Yeah.
policy making level too?
One that as far as I know, we've never had direct interaction with, it would be kind of interesting, would be the Thurston County Farm Bureau. Are they on the list?
They're on the list.
Yeah,
Yep.
We have had interaction.
well, not in my time.
And they
I
haven't
personally
been-
had interactions
they
with them,
haven't
but
been
as a
good.
board, we
Yeah.
haven't.
well, are you aware that, Sona Markholz from, Salmon Creek Meats down in Mossy Rock. Is, pretty excited about the Lewis County Farm Bureau. And wanting to, talk about water rights with them, and she said you don't have to be a Lewis County member to be in the Lewis County Farm Bureau. They're
you-
having a farm stomp
They
on,
are.
the
The 9th?
February
Yeah.
8th.
Yeah, something like
You've
that.
seen that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. So, Farm bureaus, maybe they're lightening up a little or something?
Maybe. But that
Each
would be,
chapter
that would
is
be worth
definitely different.
inviting them in here and to see what our local Thurston County
Yep.
chapter
Yeah,
is doing.
that
And-
might be interesting, yeah. It's the second, if anyone's interested, the barn stomp if you wanna know more, I can get you
When did the
details.
second?
I have.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's my suggestion. Let's open the door and talk with the Farm Bureau.
Sounds great. We can definitely reach out and get folks on the list for that. And we have started regular quarterly meetings with the Squaxin Island tribe too. The staff in the Natural Resources Department there, which we've worked.
Is that in Thurston County? Foxen Island?
They claim to be.
They claim, yeah.
What-
Yeah, they're
It's usually
They're-
customary.
The reservation, the reservation is not in Thurston County.
Yeah.
Squaxin land does extend into western Thurston County, although it does not extend probably as far as they claim it extends.
I see.
It doesn't extend into Bud Inlet, it extends a little,
Even though we have a park in Bud Inlet named after them.
because we already have park named after Nisqually, which it was Nisqually land, but the Squaxins claim it.
Yeah.
Yeah, their primary interest is in the Deschutes watershed, Eldon, Totten. Those are the areas that we interface with them the most.
Okay.
And that's within their historic lands.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
I'm mostly here as an observer, of course, and I don't know enough about the conservation district, which is part of why I'm here to find out, but one interest I have is, I'm so palpably aware that once we lose farmland, we lose farmland. And things are changing so much in the economy and the environment, et cetera, that I think farmland becomes more and more and more valuable. I mean, not just economically valuable, but valuable to us as people. and that attitudes towards it may change as that goes on. And I'm wondering, is there any group or whether the conservation that sort of evaluates lands in Thurston County and says, this is the most valuable farmland in terms of, you know, how rich that soil is or how productive that soil can be, and that it is key to be preserved, almost in the way you preserve a historical site or. Yeah.
I guess the quick answer to your question is that's what the county just recently did.
Okay.
They were sued by FutureWise over the comprehensive plan,
Okay,
not designating enough farmland, and they just went through a multi-year, very complicated process to take a look at that issue. The outcome of which was basically not changing anything about the process, or the outcome didn't change. We didn't add any new land of any practical sense in to long-term preservation for agriculture, so. But that's the only group that's looked at it in a holistic, I won't say holistic, has looked at it at a county level. There's been other efforts like within the city of Olympia to evaluate agricultural potential through our urban agriculture initiative. But
Isn't the American Farmland Trust doing some of that work?
they have done a little bit of the work, and Community Farmland Trust has done more site-specific assessments, but yeah. But maybe American Farmland Trust, it's been a while since we've had, maybe we get Addie to do a Zoom.
That would be great, because they have
presentation
done more
with us.
analysis, and that might be really.
Yeah.
So the USGS
Mhm.
has soils maps and updates soils maps
Yeah.
based on new information. Regulators tend to look to those maps to try to determine them, but most of the site-specific work is done by lawyers trying to opt out of a restrictive
Yeah,
covenant by showing that the map is wrong or that there's something specific by the soil to opt it out. Because it really requires landowner voluntary participation to burden their properties, and that's a hard sell.
yeah, which is why nothing changed with the county adoption of what they hope is going to withstand legal challenge from FutureWise in the next round.
The issue becomes very three-dimensional and very complex really
Right.
quickly too,
And so
when we
then-
have housing and endangered species regulations. And Thurston County is a small geography, and so every piece of property has to be so multi-layered with benefits and use in all of these areas, and that type of comprehensive analysis I haven't seen that
No.
done by anyone. It's sort of which one of these buckets is on fire the most right
Right.
now, and so environment or endangered species has been a big focus of developing some of the land use and permitting processes at the county and prioritization for preservation because of the legal requirement and the moratorium on development that was in place before the habitat conservation plan. So it's the same thing. You pull one thread and that touches so many other pieces.
I'd really like to see a conference on Thurston farmland that we host in a year or two. And invite all those people just to get all the cards on the table so people know what we're dealing with.
That's our next annual conference, which will happen in 2026, since we're doing it every other year now. But maybe that becomes the theme of that conference.
Yeah,
I like
well,
it.
that was sort of my other question is education to the
Yeah.
general
Yeah,
populace.
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated you, TJ, pushing that more than we used to. I think that's really so important.
Thanks.
The other thought I had when the woman was talking about the Harvest Festival is, what about doing it at the Hands-on Children's Museum? Because it is a lot of family and kids event, and there'd be a lot of parking there. And if you could do it in conjunction with them.
People love them.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't explored any partnership events with the Hands-on Children's Museum, but definitely something that we should look into.
Yeah,
I mean.
Don't do it on Arts Laws
To
weekend.
do it the
There's
same
no parking
weekend as
down there.
Arts Walk, no, but if you
Yeah.
did move it to a different weekend.
I go to a lot of Society of American Forces meetings there.
What kind of museum?
Interesting. Well, you can pass that one on to Kiana.
I will do that.
Okay, unless there's anything else in partner presentations, I think we'll break 5 minutes early here. Conclude our work session, and then we'll come back at 6 o'clock or 6:30. 6:30, and have the board. Okay, it's 6:30. Welcome everyone to Thurston Conservation District Board of Supervisors board meeting for January 28th, 2025. We have three board members here with us this evening: Doug Rushton, Betsy DeRita, myself, TJ Johnson. And we have two are not here. But we do have a quorum, so we will continue with our business. We also have a couple other people here. Susan, who introduced herself at our work session, and Josh from the commission. Welcome. First thing we want to do is take a look at the agenda. As I mentioned at the work session, we bumped some things from the work session to the board meeting. So the agenda looks a little bit different than the one that was sent out, but not significantly. So unless there's any changes, we'll need a motion on our agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as it stands.
It's gonna be easy. There's only two of you here to
Yeah.
move and second
You can
things
always-
tonight.
You can go first.
I already moved.
All right,
Oh,
it's been
sorry,
moved
didn't
and
hear.
seconded to approve our agenda, so we'll take a vote on that motion. Betsy, Doug, chair votes aye. We've approved the agenda. That takes us to item 3, which is our consent agenda.
I move adoption of the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to approve our consent agenda. I'm not gonna go through everything on it, just to say that there's a lot of stuff on it tonight. So we'll take a vote on the consent agenda. Doug?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That's been approved.
I think there was an appropriate one. One of these, there was a Scatter Creek Chehalis project.
No,
It was in the packet,
Uh-huh.
and I read the thing, and whoever wrote it needs to use spell check and look at grammar, and it was not very good.
Which one?
The Scatter Creek / Chehalis project. I didn't write the number. I don't think it's on there. Or if it is, I'm not sure
Is it
which
the
one.
Ducks Unlimited one? No.
No.
Anyway, the site description could be better. The grammar sucked.
I think it was the Antiquity Consulting one.
I don't think so.
No? It's okay.
I can look into that.
The Latin convention for Latin names.
Mhm.
And then one sentence, it had paved parking and garden areas. So I read that when I first read it, it has paved parking and paved garden area, stuff like that. Anyway, better
All right.
parking, not fatal, but
Proofreading.
Yep,
Noted.
I'll do that. Thank you, Doug.
All right. Item 4 is public comment. This is the point at which any member of the public can address the board for up to 3 minutes on a topic that's on their mind that would also be relevant to us. Is there anyone that wishes to make public comment this evening? We don't have anyone online, do we?
No.
No one online, no one in the room. So I will close public comment. And we will move to partner reports. First up here is NRCS. They're not present tonight. I imagine they're in quite a quandary of figuring out things right now. So we'll hopefully connect with Michelle next time around. But we do have our item B partner here, Josh.
Hey,
Commission.
well, good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, hello, good to be here. Yeah, boy, a lot going on in the old federal and state landscapes these days. So it's kind of exciting times to kind of be on your toes and seeing what's going on. We did get the outgoing governor's budget. Not sure if you guys have, dug into that, but the commission fared fairly okay, but there was a lot of spending and taxation in that, and it looks like the incoming governor has a different set of goals and priorities, and he hasn't detailed. We haven't seen like a detailed budget from him yet, but just his kind of budget priorities. Didn't see anything in there around natural resources, so The agency will be meeting with his new natural resource, policy person who, his name's Owen Rowe.
Hmm.
Don't know if that name rings any bells to anybody. I think somebody said he may have come through state parks. Verify that yet. I just heard that yesterday. So we'll certainly be, really full court press on the conservation technical assistance funding. That's a priority. Forest health, I know that there's been some documentation floating around that's trying to stand that up, because there was a cut in that, and that does really affect districts, so we're keeping our eyes on that. I'll just say the Office of Chehalis Basin, their budget, they've requested, I think, a little, like right around 80 million, and Inslee had 70 million, so we'll just kind of see where that all shakes out. Sounds like the director of Chehalis Basin, the office there, was able to meet with the new ecology director, Director Schickskiller. If you're familiar with him, he's coming to the agency from EPA. Just because I have to say it, I'll be doing the Conservation Accountability Performance Program. Obviously, I don't see any issues here, so that's just a formality. And then, yeah, we're keeping our eyes on the federal stuff. Starting to see some messaging go out from districts, talking to their staff, letting them know what they know, and, you know, just keeping those lines of communication open. So we'll just kind of do our best to keep on top of that, and yeah, happy to answer any questions, and thanks for letting me go for a couple minutes.
Did I hear you right? Did you say the governor doesn't have anything in his plan for conservation?
Well, so when Governor Inslee, he's required to submit a detailed budget, and that goes through everything, all the programs, everything. Ferguson has come in and he hasn't gotten to that point yet.
Oh, he hasn't gotten that.
And so he just outlined his broad stroke priorities, which was like law enforcement,
Consumers.
housing, ferries, that, I mean, just kind of broad stroke stuff. So I don't know the timing of, I think probably once, because what I heard was like the at least like the natural resource person, this Owen person, I mean, just drinking from a fire hose. It's good that the OFM staff is pretty consistent through this whole transition. Leadership can change, but the kind of boots on the ground people that work with the agencies remains pretty consistent, and so that'll help. You know, when they're meeting with their people and kind of.
Office
of Financial Management, sorry, they're the kind of the budget writer for the governor.
So Ferguson did announce a 6% across the board cut. And so just, is the commission kind of gaming that to see what a 6% cut across the board would look like?
Well, keep in mind that's directed at the cabinets, and so we have some flexibility within that. And so, yeah, I think they're doing some internal review. Inslee did do some clawback before he left. It wasn't a big hit to us. We did offer up some stuff. There were agencies that offered next to anything, like nothing. And so, you know, we're trying to be good partners and players in this landscape. Don't want to get off on the wrong foot, but yeah, that's being figured out.
And I guess the second thing is for you, Sarah, based on what you said, Josh, about districts communicating with employees. Is that something that we have done or should do to just kind of check in with our employees in a consistent way with a message?
About funding in general?
Yeah, because I imagine there's a lot of freaking out and concern right now.
Yeah, I think we've been pretty consistent as we've developed and discussed messages here. We do a debrief of some of the board business at our next staff meeting and carry those messages forward. So there's a lot of that. We also discuss this pretty intensively. We have a leadership team with all of our department directors. So funding is probably one of the primary things we discuss at all times of that meeting. And then they're disseminating this information to folks through there. So I would say, yeah, we have regular and constant
Okay.
touch points. We haven't issued like an organizational wide memo on anything at this point,
Okay.
probably because, I mean, things are
Yeah,
rapidly
we don't
evolving, so it's
necessarily need- I
been,
just, yeah.
yeah,
makes
we've
sense.
definitely been keeping folks in the loop so that they're not feeling like they're hearing a bunch of things on the outside and they're concerned about feeling unknown in TCD, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think within that context, I think an important message to the next staff meeting is the creation of this long-term funding
Yeah.
committee. That, you know, we're trying to do whatever we can to get ahead of the curve to minimize impact and disruption on the organization.
And there'll be staff participation in that already, so.
Yeah, absolutely, but just so that they know that we understand that context.
Great.
Okay.
I was gonna ask the 6% question. So, because TJ asked that, I'll go to the 6 billion to 15 billion shortfall. How's the commission dealing with that?
I think it's,
Wait and see.
yeah, I mean, it's, we put in some pretty big budget asks, and so. You can, and then we've also, I heard yesterday. That really Ferguson's just like directed his candidates, he's like, you're not testing, you know, we don't want you testifying on bills. I mean, you can go provide information, but we don't want you supporting anything or. Come on, I mean, it's like, they're really trying to buckle down on that, but then you look at the, you know, what they're on. There's already like 600 Senate bills, there's, I mean, they're gonna go crazy. But then they're gonna get reined in when it comes to fiscal notes, et cetera, but yeah, it's all being kind of. Starting to really digest it and figure it out,
A lot of unknowns.
yeah.
All right, unless there's anything else, thanks, Josh, appreciate you being here as always.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, that takes us then to you, Doug, for the next couple items, WACD, NACD.
Okay, I don't have anything to add to the NACD report that I provided. But I do have stuff to add to the WACD report, because we had a board meeting last night. Which went till 9:30. So just really high level finances are in fine shape. They still have the lag at the plant material center because you sell the plants and then you reinvest it to get the new ones grown. So that takes a while. We've got a draft annual plan of work that we're looking at now. We've got several committees that have been set up. We'll have a weekly update that's provided by Ryan Bay on the legislation. And there's also stuff on the hub. So you can look at that. We did Tom's performance review, at least discussed it. Tom Salzer is the executive director for the WACD, Washington Association of Conservation Districts. And I think overall, the consensus was he's doing really well. I pointed out, like, look where we were 5 years ago, 7 years ago with the previous executive director. So look where we're heading. And the last thing, we're going to have a board strategic planning session at Bow on June 17th. We have our normal meeting on the 16th at Bow. And they want to include others besides the board in that, and I would like, you're okay, and the board's okay to nominate Sarah to be an attendee of that. Because I think you do a good job of strategic planning and thinking differently than other people sometimes. So are you okay with that? 16th and 17th? Just the 17th would be the only one you really have to go to.
Yeah, let me just double check what day that is, but
and
I
I can
don't have any
recommend-
opposition.
I can recommend a hotel.
What week is, wait?
Yeah.
It's 2 weeks before that. I can tell you exactly. if you know when it's at.
It should be the week before.
Is the board okay with that?
If Sarah can make it work within her work plan, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say, I think Sarah ought to be at this.
All right. That it on WACD, Doug?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much. That moves us to item 6. We have a resolution before us, cost of living adjustment. which we talked about briefly at our December meeting in the context of approving a collective bargaining agreement. So, is there any, well, let's get a motion on the table, then we'll have discussion on this. There's a motion on this, the motion on this resolution.
Resolution 25-01 of cost of living
Is there a
adjustment.
second? Okay, so any discussion, comments on this issue?
I would just add that this is reflective of the terms in the collective bargaining agreement.
And we would extend this COLA to our non-represented employees as well, which I think are just you and Katrinka. Yes, I'm, yeah. So it
I
would be,
think that was in the stuff that we cut last time, wasn't it?
We had some additional communications,
Yeah.
that I disseminated on TJ's behalf via email.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'd heard that before. but-
Yeah.
yeah, and we had talked about that at our discussion about Sarah's performance anyway, so. Okay, so essentially it covers everybody in the, who's employed by the organization. So there we go. All right, so with that, let's vote on this resolution. Who made the motion again? You made the motion. Okay, Betsy,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. We approve that. Moves us to item 7, governance. First up here, annual and strategic planning. Sarah.
Yeah, as you saw, and I'm happy to pull it up again if you'd like, in my December board report, I sort of outlined a couple of things that we're looking at doing this year with annual and strategic plans. Quickly, we're going to extend our current strategic plan to cover this year because we're going to be doing strategic planning for the future. With that, we're going to also adopt an annual work plan for this year. Staff is recommending we do those in tandem, and present the annual plan with the enhanced strategic plan at the same time so that we have consistency in those and can wrap those up nicely at the end of the year. And then we're proposing that we begin a strategic planning process to cover the next 5+ years, and starting that later this year once we have the outcome of our elections and appointments, and developing a great process and outlining that a little bit further on in 2025, that'll be really efficient and time effective. Those of you that have been in past strategic planning processes, it's been really hit or miss on community engagement and how much time, commitment versus value we've had. And so I've been waiting for this moment because I love facilitation and strategic planning. So to propose a process that I think is going to get us further. I'm also thinking because of the big things that TCD does now and the big visions we have for the future, that we might want to entertain a longer term strategic plan. So thinking about, you know, in our sphere of known, what we can achieve in the next few years, and then a few more years, but where do we want to set our like longer distance mile markers out there? Where do we want to be in 10 years? And what could that vision look like? Is there a vision we have for 20 years? All of this, of course, is subject to revision and updating. It's a living document. There may be new boards, different priorities, or we may get into that and decide the course changes, and we can always do that. But I think having those longer term visions are things that will be really helpful because we're doing much longer term processes like building a conservation and education center. So I'm proposing to bring that process to you guys later this year as we have potentially a new board member too involved in the organization. Most immediately though, staff is going to bring a proposed annual plan draft for your review and discussion at the February work session. And we're going to do that in tandem with an extended strategic plan. So right now, just continue to familiarize yourself with what our annual plan and current strategic plan look like, and think about your goals for this year. Think about if those metrics are resonating or not with you. If there's other things, we've been able to add other qualitative things to that list each year, depending on funding. And for those of you that might be newer to conservation districts, this is where our approved annual budget meets our strategic plan goals and they meld into our annual plan of work. So to some degree, those guiding principles and then the budget is already set and we're demonstrating how those come together to inform our work. So any questions about that piece or thoughts or other discussion?
I guess one comment I would have is around that issue of public participation.
Yeah.
Which I was here for the last planning process, and we put an inordinate amount of staff resource and board resource
Yes.
into those sessions that were very sparsely attended and in my assessment didn't provide a lot of value. That said, we still need to have a process that looks inclusive to the public.
Yeah.
So, finding that balance of appropriate resource allocation, but still bringing the public into the process to the extent they want to be involved in it.
Yeah.
Well, since then Zoom is so much more acceptable, we can at least.
So I'll let you peek behind the curtain a little bit on some of the thoughts that we've been mulling around. One is instead of sending out an entire 25-page strategic plan to our partners and asking them to submit track changes, comments to it, which we did one time. It was a bad idea. We might develop a survey that says, these are our strategic plan goals. Can you rank them based on your priority? What have we forgotten? What might be new things? Bigger bucket, higher level, overarching priorities and goals. What other feedback would you like TCD to know? What's important to you? So those are more of the level of feedback we might generate, and we might do that over a period of months through a survey that we can easily analyze data and pull out trends, and we might market that through our regular channels like our Facebook page, our newsletter, other types of partner listservs and things like that. But we can control data aggregation a lot easier. We may also use some of our big regular touch points like plant sale or harvest festival to have more information about this process for people to engage in, because they're events that we're already investing in and creating anyway, that we can touch, different members of the community, rather than creating the sort of road show that we did last time that wasn't sparsely attended.
Yeah.
So those are just some of the things that we're thinking of how to maximize our touch points with people, but also make it easy to participate. I think people are just over surveyed to death. And if it can be 3 questions in an open-ended box, and it takes you 3 minutes to do, you're gonna get more response than.
And if you're doing it in an environment where you're giving them something like the Harvest Festival.
Yeah.
So it's community building and you're asking for their participation as you give them something.
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting to, if the timing were to work, thinking about adoption of the plan or whatever. If we could have kind of a draft plan before the Harvest Festival, and then we could have just like a booth for the board or a table for the board with just the big poster. Here's the things we're gonna work on in the next 5 years, and just be able to gauge people around some bigger topics like that as kind of a final check-in before adoption. I think that'd be a great opportunity.
Yeah.
I think be a really high level and we get the responses there, leaves us with flexibility to react to those things. I like that.
Yeah.
But we can't forget the people that don't do electronics.
Yeah, and we'll want to develop a system to ensure that we can get feedback from folks. And what we've done in the past with that is, like, at the Harvest Festival, we have our own iPad or tablet synced up to our surveying system, because what we want to avoid is loose papers that we then have to manually integrate into a surveying system later that could be lost or just a big capacity sort of drain on staff resources. But that's been helpful in the past. Even if we ask people questions, what do you think about X? What do you think about Y?
One of the things, other things that occurs to me is it'd be nice to have a fairly big monitor there, and we could do a YouTube with you or somebody explaining, okay, here is a 3-minute video. This is what we're trying to do.
With our strategic plan.
Look to your
But
left.
keep in mind, we never know what the weather would be like.
Yeah.
A lot of.
Of an umbrella we can put over it.
Inside, that'll be an indoor act. Yeah.
But you use that, the Harvest Fair as a final kind of interactive opportunity to reality check sort of where we think we're headed.
At least those big bucket.
Yeah, the big
items.
buckets.
Yep.
Not the details. by
Yeah.
any means. Yeah,
Super reasonable.
editing by committee is never a good idea. Okay, so to be.
The track changes, that would have been fun.
It sounds like you need more to do, Josh. All right, moving on here, WACD Ledge Day next Wednesday.
Wow, yes. February is next week. Can you guys believe that?
Technically, February is this week. Just saying, starts on Saturday.
It's my birthday. True.
You're an Aquarian.
Have you not noticed that?
My birthday is Ledge Day. I'm an Aquarian.
Really?
Have you not noticed that?
Maybe that's why we get lost.
And nobody else understands us.
Right? Like, I know what you were gonna say here. Okay, anyway, in all seriousness,
Happy birthday.
we can jointly say thank you.
Thank you.
There's a lot of moving pieces regarding Ledge Day. We did talk a little bit about the rates and charges House and Senate bill in the work session when our county manager was here to introduce himself and get his support for that. That also is an interest of the staff that we met with earlier this week at the Squaxin Island Tribe. There's a lot of partners that are really excited and interested about those bills moving forward. So that's definitely one of the top priorities for this district because we have rates and charges and we're capped at the lowest amount of money because of our population is lower than counties. So, and we have a lot of community appetite and partner appetite at our jurisdictions that see us as a solution and a resource for them and community members, and would like to see the funding investment and conservation grow responsibly with the work that we have in this community. So that's a huge piece. Also, that was mentioned, CTA is definitely the biggest. It's conservation technical assistance funding is of greatest value to all districts statewide. It definitely is a huge asset because it is one of the only funding sources that we get from the state legislature that we can plug into local priorities here.
CGA, remind me,
CTA is conservation technical assistance.
CTA. I'm
Yep.
certain.
Yeah, so that's sort of a newer term, a newer funding line that's come on in the last couple of years. And it's really been a huge support for districts, even some districts that just need that funding to keep the lights on, right? I mean, it's been really critical in leveraging and the growth that you've seen in districts across the board. You saw in my report too, that the wildfire and forest health funding conversation that Josh alluded to has been a critical piece. The outgoing governor's budget had a slight reduction in the carry forward funding for that program. We're also coming off of a budget cycle, a biennium budget cycle that was not just the base level of funding, but had some additional one-time funding on top of that. A lot of other districts really increased their capacity for that. Ours, we kind of kept at that sustaining level within that program. There are a lot of districts that are at serious risk of layoffs if there's not sufficient funding coming through, and that's lost technical expertise in the forestry and wildfire preparedness and recovery side. So there's some other districts are facing some really critical situations there with that. That is the plotter, Prince Big Maps. He likes to talk late at night to the coffee pot. You know, that wasn't in the contract, Doug.
AI is taking over.
True. So like Josh said, we'll see what comes this year, right? We're starting from a fresh slate, but that also is one of the funding sources that is important here to TCD. In our forest health work, we have a forester now. We were able to get a forester last year because of this funding line. We do have other funding that fund that position, but we have really seen a huge interest and demand from Thurston County residents around wildfire preparedness. Just astronomically, when we did sort of a Thurston Mason Pierce project, the majority of respondents and interested individuals came from Thurston County. And so that's a huge element. We're doing a community wildfire protection plan process right now with all of South Thurston County, and we want to see after that, all those planning efforts have been done, we want to see those investments continue to grow and those projects that we identify collaboratively with partners take root into the future. So that's another prioritized funding source. Otherwise, there's a lot of great programs, the same sort of similar types of budget items and considerations that have gone forward. The last thing that I would mention is related to the Conservation and Education Center. This is the time that we've done the sprinkling of, hey, we're gonna do this in the future. We're thinking about this, we're building this thing. And as this starts to take shape a lot more, we want to really start to prime the pump for future year legislative requests. We don't have one in this year, but we want to tell them we're coming back to you next year or the year after. And we're going to be asking you for money for this project. We want to get them enthusiastic and involved and excited about it, and particularly the legislative district that we might land in. So across the board, yes, it's a great boon for this whole area and the legislators that are in that area. We have some that are particularly supportive of TCD. And so that's an area to have those kinds of conversations. So that's a big chunk of like the priority piece. I want to pause and see if there's any additions or conversations or questions around that. And then I'd love to talk to you guys a little bit about scheduling.
One question, maybe Josh, you'll know something about this. I read Danny Madrone's legislative update, and I didn't see anything about an urban ag bill yet, but my understanding was that coming out of the study that Representative Reeves is planning to introduce an urban ag bill. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything, and I've been reading the bill titles every day,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen it come across. Not to mean that it wouldn't show up tomorrow.
Yeah,
or
it just hasn't been dropped
just
yet.
hasn't been dropped yet.
Okay, that's what I thought, so, okay.
I can ask.
Okay, so scheduling and logistics then.
So we're still working on finalizing some scheduling. WCD staff graciously does scheduling for the majority of districts with legislative appointments, and they're particularly effective at it, which is wonderful. So they are still in the works doing some follow-up calls for these pieces. They've had some staff out with some serious health issues recently. As of now, we've got a couple of appointments down and a lot of folks that are still in the works with scheduling. For the day of, we have a 1:30 with Senator McEwen in the 30th. No, that's next. Yes, in the 35th, we had a McEwen and I always get to transpose them.
This is Drew McEwen.
Yeah, 35th. And the day before, there's a joint meeting with Clark Conservation District at 3:45.
Did you say the date? What is the date?
On the 4th, the day before the legislative day, with Orcutt, Representative Orcutt, February 4th at 3:45. Andrew Barkus is unavailable he's the second, is unavailable for the first 2 weeks of February. And so I have a question to the board. Would you like me to pursue a late February meeting? In the past, we took meetings all month, or at least last year, we took meetings all month just to try and have as many touch points with as many electeds as possible. Some of those, it was just me over Zoom for a few minutes when they had time. And on legislative day in particular, we've had much more board and staff presence. So we have a whole bunch of TBDs on times, but interest that's been received. So I don't have my matrix that I normally like to have at this point with all of the appointments and the times for you guys to sign up. But what you could share if you'd like is, would you like to come to legislative day? Are there particular people you'd like to meet with? Would your attendance be dependent on if your people are available? And then also just to share that, of course, WC is going to have their legislative breakfast from 7 to 8. It's in Lacey this year, though, and that address is in my director's report.
Holiday Inn, it's on the south side of it.
Okay.
And then we have the Columbia Room in the Capitol that James Thompson from the commission is able to get. And between 11 and 2, there'll be cupcakes. So you can invite the staff of the
Have a cupcake.
legislators
There you
to
go.
have a cupcake.
A conservation cupcake.
To address one of your questions, Yes, I think anytime we can have a meeting with legislators is a good thing. So throughout the month or whenever, yes, by all means, I think that's worth pursuing. Your second question in terms of who wants to participate or is able to participate, I'm out for the 5th. I'm making a presentation at Evergreen that day and attending their internship fair.
I can do the 4th and the 5th. The 7th, through the next week and a half, I'm gone.
Let me see.
So we'll have at least one board member there with you, it sounds like.
Great.
Cool.
Doug and I make a good team.
You know,
Looks like that's happened before.
we've
It's fine.
received compliments from legislative staff and the legislators on how we work together to help them understand what's going on.
All right,
And I'll just keep, I'll keep Doug, I'll keep you posted. I'll make sure that I send out that information broadly and that Mary Ann and David are informed and have all the information if they'd like to participate in any of these pieces.
And obviously, we have to be careful of the quorum issue. What I mean there is, if we have 3 board members, that's an official meeting. You can't do that without advertising it.
I should know this week if we're gonna have more folks even on campus, and then we'll publish a notice of quorum.
all right, let's move on then to update on the CEC, if there is one.
There's a small one. We're a little bit in wait and see holding pattern on the property piece. Our partners that we're working with, which is the city of Tumwater, is working on a real estate transaction for some land. And I'm hoping to hear more after this month on how that process is going, and then we will have more conversations about how TCD might be involved in that property into the future. So right now what we're focusing on is funding development and getting our financial strategy in order, and our partnership building. We're just continuing to tell anybody that will listen, to about the CEC and get them really excited. And then these pieces are gonna dovetail. We're working on a couple of things like a congressionally directed spending application. Submitting that to Congress. We're working with Senator Patty Murray's aide on drafting that application and making sure we find the right pathway through that complex system. We're also priming all of our partners to submit letters of support, jurisdictions, tribes, community groups, users of this CEC, partners of the CEC, all of the above, so that we can show really robust and broad-based support for this opportunity to hopefully make our application as strong as we can. We've also been working a lot on our sort of financial matrix and forecasting about where we might be seek money for certain phases of the Conservation Education Center, for each phase of development. The land purchase piece might have different funding plots associated with that. And then the building design and development, and how might those things relate to each other, and what might our goals be if we do X, Y, and Z. Right now, we're really zeroing in on the land piece, because that's the first step in our process, is we have to have a place to build a building in order to do that. But we're also starting the process of submitting this congressionally directed spending application that might land in the future for the building design component. So right now our partners are really interested in exploring a unique concept with us about a work trade opportunity that our subcommittee found really exciting, which is if TCD can help with some of the planning, design, and restoration elements of some of their mitigation land on site, could they trade a dollar for dollar the services TCD provides for a reduction in the purchase price of some, or maybe all. We'll see what happens. So we will, as we move into that property purchase phase of the discussion, we'll get down to like the specifics of those numbers. What are they looking at in terms of offering property to us and those things. Before any of that happens though, they understand very clearly that once they have ownership of this property, that we need to come out and see the property before we move forward, because we've done the drive-bys and the window surveys, and we've looked on geodata and done that. But our board has not been out on site, and we want to do that and look at it and do that walkthrough piece, and they are very supportive of that. So it's just been a really excellent partnership thus far with really supportive and enthusiastic individuals. So yeah.
One of the things that's always been on my mind, and I'm not sure how to quantify it. It's the analogy I used earlier, okay, we can provide services to this level now, but the demand is huge.
Mhm.
How to quantify that to show folks, to get them encouraged about this, that, you know, we really wanna meet the demand, you gotta do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, we have a lot of things that we can pull to justify this, the center, the demand to like grow and continue to meet people, to educate people about conservation practices and the work we do as an entity that does things primarily in private lands, bringing those out and into the public eye for people to see. And this conservation hub idea that was so important in our focus groups too, is a lot of our nonprofit partners can't afford rent in Thurston County anymore. And so how are we also elevating multiple boats? How does that relate to job creation? All of these pieces, we're trying to pull all of these threads and tie them together.
If there's a matrix that shows that, I'd sure like to see it.
Well, we're gonna develop it as best we can, and at some point, we're gonna come back to the board and recommend that we hire a consultant to do some of this work too, that does this for a living. So that's another conversation we've had in the subcommittee is how far can staff expertise carry these pieces, and where are we identifying that we might need to look at consultant support in the future?
One thing just to follow up on, the congressionally directed spending. Just so everybody knows what that means, it's what they used to call earmarks, where they can just take and fund something because they want to fund it because they're a senator. I was in a meeting yesterday with Marie's aide in our interjurisdictional meeting, and there is no guarantee that that system is going to continue. So it's been there the last couple of years. They brought earmarks or congressionally directed spending back a couple of years ago, but there's no sense of whether it'll continue or not in the future. Timing wise, he was encouraging us, and Sir and I talked earlier, to have something tangible to put forward by the March deadline, assuming it continues. The deadline for the next round would be in about 2 months in March. So that's kind of the timeline we're working with. And keeping fingers crossed. It has to be very preliminary. It doesn't have to be specific at all. Yeah, we'll get, the larger question is whether that will even be an option under the new situation, so. Okay, thank you with that. Let's then move to item D here, which is to take a look at what's on tap for us next month.
Sorry about that. Don't know where it went.
It's down at the bottom. Oh, there.
There it is. All right, so. Looks like a staff presentation from Joey on the Skookumchuck restoration. More on annual strategic planning. Very similar looking items to what we always see on our work session agenda.
And Sophia will probably have the long-term funding committee as a standing item.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's long-term funding, not long-term planning. All right,
I'd suggest, because we have 3 people going from the district to NACD, a debrief on the NACD meeting.
you want to do that under the NACD reports in the board meeting?
I think it'll be different, because I go to different meetings than Sarah and
Well, I'm thinking you both combined make a report on an ACD, then we just talk about it once.
Yeah, I'll probably put some content in my ED report as well.
Okay. So,
and I'll use that as my report too then.
so you scroll up a little more on the board meeting agenda then. Minutes and financial reports and all of the usual stuff. Potential executive session on real estate acquisition. When that executive session happens, it might be nice to have that geodata map that you talked about and some of that basic information available to the board before we go to any potential site visits.
Yeah, absolutely.
See it on the screen first.
Can we just hold a potential executive session on litigation?
It might want to be a standing item from now on, huh?
At least,
For a while.
well, maybe not, but we can always take it off.
Yeah.
As we publish close hand, but let's
Put it on.
put it on now.
So you want for
Well,
litigation?
yeah, executive session on potential litigation.
Yeah.
And with another report, you have to report them out separately, right?
Yeah.
So, and,
And if we don't need it, we'll just pull it.
right.
And Sophia, when you send out the agenda for review, would you
There's a
copy
litigation
Ben
in
on
the
that?
context of what's
Mhm,
happening,
for now,
federal budget
and that way
contracts,
you can help make that call on whether or not we should keep it.
Right, and we don't need to describe it in any more detail than potential litigation.
Yeah, we have that citation in the past. Yeah,
Okay.
I do.
With that, that's our draft, subject to further revisions. That moves us to the last order of business here before we adjourn, which is updates and announcements. We'll start with board updates. That's anything?
I don't have any, the Farm Bureau thing was the only one, so.
All right. A couple things here. So earlier before the work session, Sarah and I met and closed the loop on the evaluation for evaluation 2024. You all have a copy of the letter now. And we had a good discussion about that. There's two lingering pieces from that process that we're going to talk about. One is the timeline for evaluation. We talked about potentially changing that timeline, so we're not doing it at the crush at the end of the year. And then the second was to review Sarah's job description. I think we agreed that it was last reviewed in 2019 when we hired her. So it probably needs a good look over. And so I've asked Sarah to take the first step at that and bring us some suggestions for updating that position. The current thinking on the timeline is maybe just moving it back 1 month so that we start our process in October rather than November. And then all those partner interviews can be done before we get into the question of holidays. And then the final product is finished in December. We've had our meeting, the letter's been drafted, and then it can take effect starting January 1. I think probably make it easier for everyone. If that sounds good to the board, I've asked Sarah to look at whether we need to change anything about our policy or the resolution adopting that or whatever for that timeline. And if so, we'll probably just put that on consent next month, if that's necessary.
Sounds good.
It's bloody awful for me, but that's okay. I've got 7 meetings throughout October that are out of town.
Well, fortunately, you don't have to make all those calls, Doug. I do, assuming I'm chair again. Unless you want to be the chair, then.
I did it for 15 years. That was enough.
All right. The second thing I moved to is we had our, I think we're calling it the Regional Conservation Caucus meeting yesterday, which is of the elected officials who care about conservation from all the various jurisdictions, was lightly attended yesterday, I will say. In fact, the person who organizes this, Jasmine from the port, wasn't even there. We're still not sure where she was. But I did learn a couple of interesting things. One is, I think our strongest champion on the Tumwater City Council is Leada Dalhoff. She is running for mayor. Current mayor Debbie Sullivan is stepping down. Leada is running, and she's got the support of Pete Knecht, the long-term mayor. So I take that to be a very good sign. She understands the CEC. She's supportive of our partnership. She's looking forward to actually working on that with us. So that was good news. The other big issue that came up talking, and the other person that was there was Ty Menser, Commissioner Menser, this issue of UJ land swaps, which I raised with the county manager here. It's a real mess right now, and as he said, they don't know if they're supposed to be following the 2022 law or the 2024 law. The Department of Commerce hasn't written the rules yet. Tumwater hasn't been informed at all about these issues around the bar holding swap that we keep hearing about. So it's a big mess, and Tumwater felt a little left out of the conversation. The interesting idea that came up from Commissioner Mentor, though, was you can't just talk about trading land within a UGA and land with outside of a UGA. You have to talk about trading developable land for developable land. Because part of what these developers want to do is they want to take undevelopable land in the rural areas and be able to develop that in urban ways. And that makes no sense. But it's very unclear about whether that criteria can even factor into these decisions at this point. So that was a pretty interesting discussion. And the other interesting thing is there's a bit of a war right now between the county auditor and the county commissioners. In charter counties, which we are not, the county commissioners can hire its own budget staff to develop the budget. And it's unclear if that can happen in non-charter counties, and our auditor has been developing the budget and doesn't want her power infringed upon. So she went to the legislature and got Representative Bateman to draft a bill that would give her the authority, that would give auditors the authority and the sole authority to develop budgets. Turns out that the auditor didn't give the full story to Representative Bateman, who's now regretting the fact that she's sponsoring that legislation. So they're all trying to figure out a way for the auditor to save face, for the commissioners to potentially have the ability to have their own budget development staff. And it's kind of a little bit of a mess right now, but kind of an interesting little turf war at the county courthouse at the moment. So, last piece from that meeting, again, going back to Tumwater and even before that, City of Tumwater has hired a consultant to develop a Tumwater food system plan for the city. And I learned about this because the consultant, Rebecca Potasnik, who works a lot with the Land Trust, contacted me and came out and wanted to talk to me about how to develop a food system plan for City of Tumwater. They have a very small budget and a very fast timeline. And it kind of came out of the blue. I don't think anybody knew this was going to happen. It was a last minute budget item by the Tumwater City Council. So it's kind of a cool opportunity. And it might help us continue to play this leapfrog. Well, we got Olympia doing this stuff over here. Now Tumwater's doing this. So now maybe we can go back to Olympia and say, you got to up your game over here and do a food system plan now that you'll be doing this other stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out. I think the study has to be done and the findings, whatever, have to be back to the Tumwater Council in the next couple of months. So it's very fast track, very high level, but the fact that they wanted to do it at all is, I think, is encouraging. And a reflection on our continued talk about urban agriculture and the importance of local food system planning.
That's amazing.
So kind of cool.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's not gonna be done federally anymore.
Right.
I'm appreciating the lady that's talking with Pete Komet. He's a former colleague of mine at ecology. And probably 15 years ago, we didn't have an office. TCD didn't have an office. They had let us use their council chamber.
Yeah.
They didn't have to do that. That was really good for free.
Yeah. Well, if we have Dalhoff as the next mayor, we'll have a really strong partner in Tumwater.
And what, can I see, do you have it written down the name? I'm not hearing her name,
Liada Dalhoff. She's
Dalhoff.
currently a council member.
like DAHL.
DAHLOFF, I think. Yeah. So that's all I have. which takes it to you to wrap it up.
Super briefly, we are looking at making a little bit of schedule adjustment to our equipment rental program that provides us with some more simplicity for ourselves and the community. In terms of scheduling consistencies, and capacity to manage, regular and routine maintenance and repairs, and primarily to ensure that we have proper sanitization of the equipment. It is still something that, not all renters do well, and just being cognizant of things like bird flu that pop up every now and then. They never really go away, right? But sometimes they're stronger years or cycles than others. We really want to experience a little bit of a break between our rentals, rather than having so much back-to-back renter-to-renter transfer of equipment, to ensure that we have proper biosecurity. So
Get me our current waiver, wanna update it in light of recent events.
great, I made some changes and it's on your way. With some very specific acknowledgement language in there. Our equipment rental program has always been something that people sign a hefty waiver that says, I acknowledge that I'm electively choosing to use this equipment that is used by others in the community, and I take full responsibility for my actions. So there's no guarantees or liabilities on TCD's side. We have updated that with some more check boxes, though, specifically related to things like disease. So you'll see a lot of this, and we're thinking of this Thursday to Monday rental period so that we have some business hours in between that we can, one, fix broken equipment. Rental equipment is used hard and it's transferred a lot. It needs a lot of maintenance all the time. And ensure proper biosecurity and sanitization. These are also the lowest used days of any of our equipment rentals, is Tuesday and Wednesday during the middle of the week. So the shoulder days and the weekends are the hot spots for people to use the equipment. So it isn't really going to have any impact on the equipment, but it is going to standardize things internally and for the community. I think just be really clean and easy and much more simple to administer this program. That's such a huge community asset, but sometimes a headache internally. So
question, is there science behind, I think you were saying that just letting it sit for 2 days increases, decreases the bacterial issues. Is that true? Just sitting?
Yeah,
I thought you said that having just some time between even.
Well, so there's a lot of science out there about, decomposition rates of different viruses. Mostly what I'm looking for is to have time in between renters that our staff can do really thorough inspections and do additional sanitization of equipment.
So are they gonna sanitize it after we've sanitized it? After a renter has sanitized it, are you saying? Double sanitized?
I mean, it
You
might be,
can't see.
yeah, it'll
if
be
was
triple sanitized likely, because what we ask for people to do is sanitize it before they use it
Right,
and sanitize it after they use it.
right.
And then we have a safeguard of sanitizing it in the middle of that process, and also doing repairs and maintenance and being able to have more eyes on the equipment to ensure it's in proper working order. And also to do maintenance and sanitizing of our trailers. I think people think about the equipment they're touching and that's touching their animals, but they don't always, even though it's in our handbooks, think about the tires that are on the trailer or the interiors of the trailers, which are not as much their responsibility as they are ours.
Right.
And so
The tires,
yeah.
you sanitize them and then you drive, through the grass. You're not gonna sanitize them out on the road, so.
Yeah, so this I think is gonna be just a very welcome sort of pause and reflection period where we can just make sure that everything is kept in really good working order and sanitized and putting our best sort of product forward to the community.
Have you looked at how many slots? How many renters, and are there enough weekends? Because let's say from June till October, it's only 20 rentals.
So remember that we have different pieces of equipment, they operate at different times of year, for some
But
of
I'm
them,
talking
like,
about poultry.
yeah, for some of the,
But
right? Well, that's just broadly for
Yeah, yeah.
everybody, so things like poultry, we have multiple units on, right? So it
Mhm.
might be a short season that people are growing, but we've got multiple units going out at the same time.
But I mean, have we done the math of what historically how many rentals?
Yeah.
And this will be enough slots.
I would say yes, and we will always have the pinch points of right before Thanksgiving or at certain standard times of year where we see an influx and inevitably know there isn't enough space. But that just is what it is with all of the units that we have. All of our surrounding conservation districts have stopped doing their equipment rental
Right.
programs.
Yeah.
And so there's that problem on top of it. We've had to shut down our equipment rental program to anybody outside of Thurston County. We were
And
getting
that's new
people,
this year, right?
yeah, we were getting people, or at the end of last year, but we were getting people from all over the peninsula and all of Southwest Washington wanting our equipment and wanting to bring it outside of Thurston County and
So that brings up a question though. Do we make it available countywide, or do we say, no, you live in unincorporated parts of Yelm and Tenino, you're not part of the district, you can't use the equipment?
no, it's available countywide.
Should it be?
It's not their fault.
It's not
well-
about fault, but it's about fairness to the people paying the bills.
I guess two things on that. One is people are paying a rental fee for the equipment. Yes, it is subsidized on the back end. The second thing is the the pieces of those cities that are not within the district boundary are not in high food producing areas. It's like 2 blocks in the city of Tenino, in the heart of the city of Tenino, or 4 blocks where there's strip malls in Yelm. Like it's not where we see a lot of ag.
Could we take a look at those areas as part of the long-term funding strategy about whether it would make sense to finally get rid of these silly boundaries and include them as part of our funding? Because we've talked about that in a couple of years past and we never really gotten to it.
Are they not?
I think we
are they not-
intentionally
So like
paused.
Tenino and Yelm are in your district?
The original boundaries in the 1947 blah, blah, blah are excluded. So we have these little pockets in Yelm and Tenino that aren't part of the district.
Have you guys ever tried to annex them?
They have shown a lot of interest in wanting to annex themselves.
Yeah.
And we, at the district had a conversation about when might be the right time to do that, and it wasn't when that sort of started to rumble, and
Yeah.
if it's the right time though, or in the horizon,
Well,
that might
the
be the
mayor
right
of
time.
Tenino who attends the interjurisdictional meetings I go to is interested.
He is, yep,
Yeah, he is interested. So this might be the right time to
Mhm.
ask the county auditor, hey, if we did this, how much would our funding increase? And be able to have
Yeah.
those conversations with the elected officials in those areas.
Yeah.
It's more than time to revisit that, I think.
Yeah.
And
And then this weird, cause I feel a little weird, like you're not paying, but you can use our equipment and we subsidize it cause you're not paying full cost. Like, there's a fairness
Yeah.
issue to me.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, don't call it equity right now.
and the reality is those
That's
folks
called
are probably
fairness.
not using
Called
our
fairness.
equipment.
Should we put that on the agenda for next meeting?
Yeah, can you do a dive into the addresses to see if any of the addresses pop?
Well, I think let's look at it as part of the long-term funding strategy first, and then we'll be reporting that back to. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can bring the information from prior assessments under our current rate schedule.
Yeah.
It gave estimates, I
Great.
think, of what the inclusion would be of those, and it was like maybe less than $10,000 at the time if we
Yeah.
incorporated all 3 of those additional jurisdictions, but
Yeah.
I do agree, like, those folks are not able to vote in our supervisor election,
Right.
or run for supervisor, and we lost a supervisor once because they moved into one of those boundaries,
Right.
so
Right,
it does create some
Yeah.
challenges.
yeah, okay. Let's
On,
look at that.
on, going back to the downtime for the equipment rental from a risk management liability perspective, it's incredibly valuable that our own people are involved in.
Yeah.
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
sanitization weekly.
I just meant, I thought I heard her say just that it would sit for 2 days without getting used would help decrease the risk.
And that does, but our own hands on it would look much better from a
Yeah.
negligence perspective.
Yeah,
If we can say we're not just relying on the honor system,
yeah,
but we're actually putting staff elbow grease into it. It would help.
Yeah.
Safety checks and, yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
Different subject, but really quickly, what do you guys think about putting under partner reports, the regional conservation caucus update? I find those really interesting to know what's going on around us.
When it happens. Yeah. And with that, we need a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Moved?
Leo abstained, yeah.
I don't mind seconding this chair if I have to.
Yeah, I second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. Let's vote on adjournment. Betsy, Doug,
Yeah.
chair votes aye. We're out. Thanks, everybody.